Hello and welcome to JPAR Maryland Living Realty. My name is Greg Fisk and I am the broker for JPAR Maryland Living Real Estate. And I just wanted to congratulate you on the decision to pursue your dream of home ownership. Whether it's your first time buying a house or it's your third time, fourth time buying a house, there's a few documents that we'd like to get acquainted with for the process of purchasing a home. The first is the exclusive buyer representation agreement. This document creates a fiduciary relationship and a legal obligation on behalf of the brokerage to operate in your best interest as the client. And this creates that agency relationship between the broker and the client, transferring the consumer to a client of ours. And this form is necessary for negotiating and transacting a real estate transaction on your behalf for the brokerage. And our agents will send this form to you. We should have this form when we go out and start the home buying process if we're shopping for homes. And we certainly need this form in place if we're going to be negotiating any deals on your behalf. And again, like I said, it creates that legal obligation for us as the realtors and the real estate agent and the brokerage to operate in your best interest. We'll just quickly go through the form so that we can acclimate you with or familiarize you with the form itself. We have the usual suspects in there, the information for you, the buyer, and the brokerage itself, and your agent as well from JPAR Maryland Living. The buyer authorization in this paragraph 3, we're more than likely going to see this as the buyer seeks the following type of property. This is going to be residential. In most cases, we're going to be representing you as the client in a residential transaction. Paragraph number 4 is the buyer agency term and rights of the parties in the expiration clause as well, and termination clause. All contracts within the state of Maryland must have a beginning and end date, so it's very important that this paragraph is filled out and we have an end date to the contract. You're likely to see anything from 6 months to a year in paragraph 4. However, as we go through the process, we'll cover what the termination clause is for that as well to make sure that we're not holding you into any binding agreement that you don't want to be a part of. I usually like to say if the client's fallen out of love with the agent, it's probably reciprocal. The agent may not want to work with the client anymore. So we make sure that we don't hold anybody into any kind of contracts that they won't do not want to be a part of. Um, but also, once the buyer lands on a property that they like, they put an offer in and it's negotiated, and we go through the contract to close process, and the property is settled on. This terminates the buyer agency agreement as well. So in this part of paragraph 4, we'll also have the termination clause. And it will usually be something to the effect of within 48 hours given written notice, or maybe 72 hours, depending on what the terms are that you and the agent discuss and agree upon. You can go through and read to the paragraph 5, buyer responsibilities and notice regarding coming soon listings. That's in there as well. We're not allowed to show listings that are in the MLS in the coming soon status, but at least it's give an acknowledgement to you of some properties that aren't on the market yet, and we can be prepared and prepped for when that property does go live. Paragraph number 7 is another one that we're going to want to take a look at, and this is the compensation to be paid by the buyer. This is sometimes misunderstood and not commonly known. 99% of the time, our compensation is paid for by the seller based on an agreement that the seller and the listing broker enter into, in an agreement in the MLS, and it's divulged on the MLS to the agents. So if you read on paragraph B, it talks about how the fee is paid, even for the buyer's agent under agency agreement, by the seller and through the listing broker. Um, Compensation does not affect or have anything to do with the agency agreement or who's representing you as the buyer. This contract solely represents a contract between the buyer and the buyer agent, in this case the buyer broker and the brokerage and the representative agent of JPAR Maryland Living. You may see in here something to the effect of 2.5% or greater or what is currently listed in the MLS. A lot of times in paragraph 7A, this compensation line will be put in there if we are to negotiate on your behalf, or let's say a for sale by owner, or if we come across a discount brokerage that's not offering buyer agency compensation, and then we can help negotiate within the terms of the contract or even the financing agreement what our compensation could be as well. The paragraph right here within 7A talks about how long this agreement lasts in the buyer agency, and the compensation due to the buyer's agents. We usually put in there 180 days, something to that effect. And that would be for a property that we show a buyer, if we're out showing property and then the buyer decides to terminate our buyer agency agreement based on the terms of paragraph 4 in this contract. However, we are still, if the buyer decides to then pursue that property that the agent has shown them, we are still due our compensation as a buyer's agent. So that's really in place to protect the buyer's agent. And then paragraph 13 talks about some of the addenda that may accompany this agency agreement, and we'll talk about those: consent for dual agency, notification of dual agency within a team, and we're also going to talk about an agency disclosure form that would be required in lieu of this agency agreement if the agent is showing property. And again, this agency agreement is required by our brokerage to negotiate, enter into any contracts, or enter any kind of representation on behalf of the buyer. It's really in place to protect the buyer, create that legal obligation for us as the brokerage to operate in your best interest, and we need to do so if we're negotiating for or on your behalf and showing properties to you as well. So we'll go on now to that other addendum that we talked about. This goes in concert with that buyer agency agreement. This is sometimes also misunderstood. This is a consent for dual agency and is a form that is provided to us by the Maryland Real Estate Commission. And this allows for the broker to act as the dual agent and appoint designated representatives within the brokerage to represent a buyer and a seller within a transaction, or in the case of just showing property that is listed by our brokerage, JPAR Maryland Living, we would get your prior consent and the seller's prior consent to show those properties that are listed by JPAR Maryland Living. And that is the first portion of this form, consent for dual agency. You're basically acknowledging that we may show you some listings that are listed by our brokerage. The agent will, of course, let you know which listings are and fall under this consent for dual agency situation. Now, the good thing is this is a two-part form and requires what's called the affirmation of prior consent to dual agency. So if we're showing some properties and one of them happens to be listed by another agent within our brokerage, and as you, the buyer, you decide that this is a property that you would like to pursue and write an offer on, we'll make sure that we have the duly appointed intercompany agents to represent both sides of the transaction. But you're affirming here, and we're making sure that you understand that this is a dual agency situation where the broker is acting as that said dual agent. So this form will also be required up front, just to give us prior consent if we may come across or show some properties that are listed by our brokerage. And then the last form that you may see, it may or may not apply to you depending on the agent that you're working with within JPAR Maryland Living. But this is notification of dual agency within a team, and this would be taking it just one more level deep if this the property that you're looking at is actually listed by the same team member. If you're working with an agent that is affiliated with one of our teams here at JPAR Maryland Living, this notification of dual agency within a team would be necessary for us to show that property. And of course, if we decided to pursue that property and enter into a dual agency situation with the brokerage. So the last form that I wanted to cover with you guys is just this understanding whom, and this is what we refer to it as, understanding whom real estate agents represent. This is an agency disclosure form. So this is also provided to us by the Maryland Real Estate Commission. And this addendum really sets out and lays out the particular roles of what a seller's agent is, what a buyer's agent would be, and the responsibilities, and again, that fiduciary relationship that's created, and the legal obligation of a seller's agent to act in the best interest or on behalf of the seller in the listing in this case, and the buyer's agents to do so and act in the best interest of the buyer. Creates that fiduciary relationship and the legal obligation on the one of our buyer's agents to work with you, and again in your best interest with those agency duties in place: fidelity, obedience to lawful directions, confidentiality, and the like. And then this form would be required if we were showing a property where we did not have an agency agreement in place, or if we're showing a particular, let's say, a for sale by owner, we would want to make sure that the owners had a copy of this form, understanding agency, and that the owners knew, if we were showing that for sale by owner, that we had a buyer agency agreement with the said buyer that we were showing the property. So this would be in lieu of that buyer agency agreement. So there you have it. Those are the quick addendum and the contract that creates that buyer agency agreement that would be necessary for us as JPAR Maryland Living and our agents to kind of turn the keys and start the buying process and help you find that dream home of choice. Well, if you have any questions, please reach out to one of our JPAR Maryland Living agents or the agent that is sending you this information or video. And as always, you can contact me directly, Greg Fisk, the broker at JPAR Maryland Living, 410 260 0202. Good luck in your home search, and we're excited to be a part of the journey. Thank you.